Hello and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Alliance. Of course, I am your host, Clay. Yes, I am alive. I am here today, this week. I want to thank, of course, my co host that is here with me today, Katie.
Hello,
And
everyone.
I want to thank her sister, Ansley. They had an amazing conversation last week. If you guys missed it, go check that out. They talked about episode 4 of Ahsoka and some of their theories and ideas and everything else. Very good discussion over there. So
Yeah,
go
she
check
killed
that
it.
out. Yeah, very, very well. It was so awesome. And Ansley, if you're listening to this, we welcome you onto the show whenever you would like. I think that you have a very good energy and uh it's amazing to not see siblings squabble. So
She is putting on a good show so that everybody else could have good impressions about me as a person. You know how this goes. Like I
but
got I got 3 of them. We all have fights.
well, it was a very good conversation. I had a very good time listening to it before I even attempted to edit, and it was so fun to listen to. So guys, if you did miss that, go check that out. Of course, I don't know why you would be listening to this review. This is going to be review of episode 5 of Ahsoka. Um, and there is much to talk about with this episode, as per a lot of people's opinions, apparently. Uh, Including my own, and I think including Katie's. So it's going to be very interesting to get down to this. We do have some listener mail. Of course, lovely listener David, I did see that you sent a email. We will get to that later
Oh, did he
today.
send another one?
Yes, he sent one. I got the notification for it literally about an hour ago, so not very long ago. So we will get to that probably before or during our review of episode 5, but we do have some news to talk about. We haven't really touched up on news in quite some time. So Katie, let's talk. We talked about from a certain point of view already. Our review is out there. If you guys would like to go check that review out, we also did an interview with the editor, Tom.
Yes.
Uh, so go check that out if you have not listened to that or watched it, because it is over on the Geekverse YouTube channel. We were able to publish that as well. So go check that out. But there is an interesting story that has come up from one of the in particular stories within that novel. Of course, this is Star Wars from a certain point of view, Return of the Jedi. Of course, we fans call it from a certain point of view Returns. Uh, what is this story coming from? Why has it gotten some backlash? Like, kind of set us up here.
So Patricia Jackson wrote Gone to the Winner's Circle, and it is about Stormtrooper TK-151. I believe we've talked about him. But uh he's a speeder bike racer who ends up joining the Empire because of tragedy that strikes when the rebellion lands a wrong hit. Um and ultimately Patricia Jackson was able to get the story that she wanted and the story to put up to a lot of people. But in that story, TK-151 is a black stormtrooper. And apparently she said that the challenge was when I got pushback from Lucasfilm about him being black and him working harder because he was black because it suggests racism. They didn't want me to show that, which was disappointing because that's real.
Are we
Stories
like
should be
Oh, keep going,
sorry.
keep going. We'll there's a big point about the Empire that we always talk about, but keep
Yeah.
going, keep going, keep going.
She said stories should be about realism as much as possible, even when they're more fantastical. Racism is an ugly thing, but you shouldn't just take racism out of stories just because you're trying to make your neighborhood or fictional galaxy look better. And the story was published as she intended, but she is worried that the story that her decision to make this choice may have cost her another opportunity to work with Star Wars, which is something that she's always wanted to do. But ultimately, her story impacted one of her students because she teaches English and creative writing. And so to get the student to come to class more, she let him read a draft of her story. And she said, he came over to my desk and said, Miss, is this character really black? And I said, yes. He replied, Miss, I'm going to hug you, and I will never forget that moment.
The thing that I wanted to bring up that we always bring up in Star Wars when it comes to the Empire hates aliens. There is
Mhm.
already racism within the Star Wars galaxy. That's not saying that a black person cannot be hated within the Star Wars galaxy. Not saying that. What I'm trying to say to those who are working in the publishing of Lucasfilm, you can't try to whitewash something that is full of intergalactic species and everything else. Like, like it doesn't make sense to be like, oh, you can't put racism in our books. It's like you
Yeah.
have
Well,
you
and
have fictional freaking characters that deal with much like with not only racism but things like slavery and like
mhm.
so many other different things, and that is what you're like, hey yo, I think we need to hit the brakes up on this whole racism thing. Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah, and obviously there's two sides to every story, but it is interesting that this came out. She doesn't name who or like how many people said what. Um, and so I do hope that she gets another chance because I thought her story was interesting. But it's just kind of something to make sure that we're continuing to pay attention to.
Yeah, one of the biggest things that I said in our review was that it was it was something that humanized a part of the empire, which was this
Yep.
character. And it was something that needed to be put in this book because you don't see that a whole lot when it comes to the depiction of the empire. We saw it in small doses in, let's say, Rebels. If you look back at Rebels, when those moments where Ezra or even Sabine had to go undercover, those people ended up being like becoming part of the rebels anyway, like the rebellion anyway. So it's like, are you really humanizing the empire? Kind of, but not really. But you're still seeing those moments. And in
Yeah.
here, with this particular story, we saw like this much bigger part of like, hey, you know, they may be the bad guys, or you know, these guys may think they're the good guys and they think these are the bad guys, but these guys didn't kill my family when shooting this thing, you know. And so
Yeah.
that's what was his motivation into like joining the empire. And I thought that was very, very interesting. And I think a story like that is important for this type of thing because you don't think about that stuff. Like, you automatically assume when you see a stormtrooper, you're like, oh, that's a bad guy.
Yeah.
But when you learn about this guy, he's not a bad guy. It's just he was there at the wrong day, the wrong time, and now his motivations were skewed. And I won't say anymore because I still think it's an awesome story that other people need to experience on their own.
Yep. And now, from a certain point of view, also did hit the New York Times bestsellers list. That came out, I believe, yesterday. But it's an amazing qualification. It just goes to show that all these authors' hard work really paid off because I want to say this is the first, from a certain point of view, novel to reach that list. So, with all the hype that was generated and everything, just
Mhm.
really impressive storytelling overall.
Yes, very, 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 very impressive. We have talked about many of the Star Wars books that we've read, hitting the New York's bestseller. So it is no surprise for the genre, or the franchise, should I say? But this series, I think it's very cool that it's the first time that it made the New York's bestseller list.
Yeah. And now to continue with our book news, as I try to find the cover of this book. We had an announcement for our first non-High Republic book of 2024. Um, and this bad boy, I did not think I was going to love this cover, but the more I look at it, the more I'm like, yes, I love this.
I think, do you know the reason why I think so many people love this cover, Katie?
Because it's a prequel movie. Like,
Not only is it prequel movie cover, but like it gives the vibe of Legends novels. Like
yes.
the colors, the tone, like everything looks like a Legends novel here. And so I
Yeah.
think that's why a lot of people saw this and they're like, "Ooh, what is this?"
Yeah.
Yeah.
For sure. So John Jackson Miller, the author of Kenobi and A New Dawn, which A New Dawn is a Rebels prequel book, if anyone is interested in that one. But he is making his return into canon literature, and he's done like some short stories here and there, but this is like his first big one since A New Dawn, and A New Dawn was very early in in the canon publishing initiative. So long time coming, but I'm really glad to see him return to this. But this novel is due to come out April 9th, 2024. It stars the entirety of the Jedi Council and has reportedly has perspectives from every single Jedi Council member. And it takes place a year before the Phantom Menace.
Yes, that was a part that I wanted to bring up. It's a year before the Phantom Menace. Uh and so I love this. Um because you get to play on the building blocks of, okay, what are we dealing with in the Phantom Menace? How do
Mhm.
we get there? What do I get? What little stones do I get to move and manipulate to cause the chaos that is in episode one? Um, and I think that is such an interesting thing that this franchise brings when it comes to novels like this, is because you have a endpoint and you have so many things of source material that you could, like, oh, I'm gonna just lay a little breadcrumb here, and
Yeah.
a random reader 5 years down the road will be like, this is the first breadcrumb for Revenge of the Sith, and you're like, what? It is like, it's stuff like this that I absolutely love. um but also with the High Republic being a thing, you can now play a little bit with that as well. It's going to be very interesting. This comes out in April of 2024. We are expecting uh Acolyte to come out when? That same time, spring 2024?
It all depends on the strikes, right? With the
Yes,
strikes going
yes.
on, they may delay it further.
Yes,
But
that is very true. But
yes.
from what we had seen, from what we were quote unquote scheduled, was spring of 2024. Now, let's
Yeah.
say all of that was finished. Let's just assume. Having high hopes here. Let's assume it's finished. There could have been a collaboration with this novel.
That's what I'm wondering because uh, the Phantom Menace is takes place 50 years after the Acolyte, supposedly.
Hmm.
So, is there going to be building blocks? Like, I was this originally intended to come out after the Acolyte if the
Exactly.
Acolyte moves?
Hmm.
Like, all of these things are just like, so juicy, and I'm so curious. Like, and I
It's the first thing that popped into my head when I saw that this was taking place a year before Phantom Menace. I was like,
yeah.
well, we know that there's the Acolyte literally right there. Like, we're getting to the point where the High Republic and the Skywalker saga are starting to be like this. Like,
Hmm.
there's no room left. Well, there is, but the space between is narrowing. I
Hmm.
hope that they keep it pretty far apart for a while. I don't want them to just like smash together and be like, ah, it's all the Skywalker saga. It's like, God damn it. You know, we
Yeah.
wanted to stay away from that. Um, but I like this because of course these are the building blocks that, you know, get us to where we eventually get to
Yeah.
in at the end game. So I really do like this. Um, I loved Kenobi. We reviewed it here on the Star
Yeah.
Wars Alliance. I thought it was an awesome book. Uh, you know, one of our big things was okay, are they going to lean into a lot of this stuff when it comes to the Kenobi show? Not
Mhm.
too much was played around with it, but I mean, with this, like I'm really excited to see, and I think most people are going to be reading this for the fact, okay, how do we get to where we are in Phantom Menace? And are there
Mhm.
going to be any High Republic Easter eggs? Because
Yeah.
I don't remember if it was you or another Star Wars podcast that I was listening to, but in some comics and novels, before even the wave of High Republic was even mentioned, there was already Easter eggs and
Yeah.
things starting to be placed within some novels and comics for the High Republic. So, like, we know this is a well-oiled machine. I just want to see that machine in motion for this book in
I
particular.
know. And I find it so interesting. So, A New Dawn was actually not just one of the first parts of the canon publishing timeline. It was actually the first novel published in canon in
Oh.
2014.
Oh,
It
wow. So
Yeah,
10 years later.
10 years later he's getting to write this novel, and he did write a short story in the Canto Bite collection that was released as part of the marketing program for Star Wars The Last Jedi, and that was 2017. But since A New Dawn, he's primarily worked with Star Trek. So,
Hmm, okay, okay. Good to see him coming back to Star Wars. This, like, I think that just seeing that announcement when you posted it in Star Wars Alliance, I was like, "What in the world is this?" So,
yeah.
I
And you and Snell had such a delayed reaction. I was like, is anybody seeing
well, I
this?
know you you posted it with all caps, like, "Oh, shit," and, like, I don't know if you had posted it, like, really early or really late. I'm actually going back to double check. Uh, I think it was actually pretty early. Um, oh, no, it was midday. It was midday. It was noon, and then I didn't say anything until, like, 2 hours later. I was like,
Yeah.
"Holy crap, hold on a second." It didn't dawn on me until the second or third time looking at the announcement of who the writer was, and I was like, "Oh, crap, okay, yeah, like, I'm down for this. I'm totally down for this."
Yeah. It's so awesome. Now, okay, what do you think is coming next for Star Wars Publishing? Because we have to start getting more announcements, right?
Okay, so we have nearly everything for the High Republic. We have the like, I I don't think we will get anything. I say even I say we don't get anything until late November, if anything at all the rest of this year.
No, you're not thinking we don't get, you're thinking we don't get another publishing announcement until November
Yeah.
for anything not High Republic related. Because like I'm looking at the timeline for phase 3 right now. Um and Defy Oh, okay. Temptation of the Force is the next adult novel for the High Republic, and it is just summer 2024. So I'm not counting High Republic within this at all. I don't think.
Okay. Yeah, because I mean, wait, you said that's the first adult novel is summer of 2024?
Yeah, so Eye of Darkness is November. And
Yes.
then Temptation of the Force is the next one, and that is summer 2024. And then Trials of the Jedi is the final adult book of the High Republic, and that's spring 2025.
Yeah.
So the Living Force kind of took that spring slot
Hmm.
for
Yeah.
publishing. Something's gonna come in the winter.
Of 2024 or this year?
Yes, for Random House Worlds
Yes, from how
2024.
um yeah, I don't think there would be an announcement for it until at least winter of this year. And technically it's not winter yet.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
I think either the end of November or a very early January announcement.
yeah. Well, so I think we've had 4 Random House Worlds books per year, including the High Republic stuff,
Okay.
roughly.
Okay.
So this year that would have been Jedi Survivor, the video game book.
Adaptation. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. And then we had Convergence,
Mhm.
and then we had Rise of the Red Blade,
Yes.
and then From a Certain Point of View, Returns, and then
Okay.
the Eye of Darkness. So that's
Yes.
5 actually.
Mhm.
So I can't math properly. So we could see probably 2 more book announcements for 2024 at least.
Yeah, I think that we could see I hmm, it's I haven't gotten this whole thing down yet when it comes to Random House Worlds or the way that the publishing news and circuit goes. You're way above me on that. But for me, the way I think about it is the initiative of wave 3. Like, I think in my mind, that's already a heavy load, right? Like,
Mhm.
especially with them having to plan out, okay, we want more time in between these books so that way individuals can catch up if they're taking it slower. Which was the whole point of stretching it out in the first place. So that way people
Yeah.
didn't have to purchase these books immediately to go on to the next one. So with that in case, I say I double down on the November, but I will also say instead of November or January, I will say November and spring will have 2 announcements. We'll have an announcement
Yeah,
in November and then announcement in spring of 2024.
that that's what I'm thinking too, especially to, like, hit that winter publishing area. I
Mhm.
don't think we get that winter 2024 book announcement until spring. I think you're right there. Um, and then, yeah, I'm picturing, like, the fall one will be winter at some point this year.
Yeah,
So,
for sure. Um, in other news, the Star Wars video game director Stig Asmussen, I believe is how you pronounce his last name, leaves Electronic Arts. Says here, he led the efforts to rebuild EA. Star Wars game franchising is leaving the company. This was after seeing both Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor make some of its top sales. He did a very good job. Now, of course, I don't know how entirely he was involved with the whole thing with Star Wars Battlefront. We, as gamers, know that Battlefront 2 was a huge mess with microtransactions and everything else. They didn't, reverse it, and since it's gotten better. But I am pretty eager to see where he goes after this. With him
yeah.
leaving EA after what he has done with Jedi Fallen Order and Survivor, I'm curious to also see how that franchise ends. There's a big assumption that it's only a trilogy, so there will be another game coming into that franchise with a new director, I'm eager to see how different the franchise turns for either the best or the worst. So it'll be
Yeah,
very, very interesting.
for sure. Obviously, I don't really have a lot of opinions on video games. So yeah, great talk.
David is actually in the chat. He says Battlefront 2 got much better after 3 years and a lot of course correction. Yes, it did. I play very, very frequently. Supremacy is like my game mode to play. But it was for a while, it was pretty bad. They really tried to just pull every penny and dime from every individual that they could. And it didn't turn out very well. We as gamers, we love to spend money on games that we love,
Mhm,
but if one game is asking us to drop 30, 40, 50, $60 a month for
mhm.
one game in particular, it's just unrealistic. And so it was getting to a point where it was unfair for players because it was basically pay to win, and it got really, really ugly really, really quickly. So they did course correct. We are we as gamers love playing that game now just because it's very fair these days. But yes, David, it took a lot of course correcting.
Yeah. So the last bit of news is actually Star Wars movie news related. And obviously with the strikes going on right now, there's not really a whole lot of news. Taika Waititi made a joke in the promotion of his, I believe his movie that just released at TIFF. I don't know the name of it off the top of my head. But he was like, "Yeah, I'm never gonna finish it," which seems to be a trend with Star Wars movies lately. But Sean Levy had a different thing to say about his, that he had actually just started the process of developing the script when the strike started, and so obviously everything had to halt. But that's kind of the news. What do you think about this?
Uh Everybody says it's a joke. I don't think it's a joke from Taika. Um like, and again, there's a lot of debate on like how Taika makes his movies. A lot of people are very pissed off that there is another Thor in development with Taika, but when it comes to the numbers that those movies bring, of course they're going to bring
Mhm,
him back. But if you look at Taika that isn't in uh Marvel, you look at stuff like oh, what's the bunny uh movie, uh the Nazi movie
yeah, I know what you're talking about. Free Guy is one. Now, granted, Free Guy did
that
buku's numbers.
yeah,
Jojo
but
Rabbit.
Jojo Rabbit, that's what it was. Not Bunny. Jojo Rabbit um made bukus and it was critically acclaimed. I say bukus. I mean bukus for a small budget film like that. Um it actually didn't go crazy amounts of money. Uh but it was
$14
critic
million budget, 90 million at the box office, and won Oscar. Won an Oscar.
yeah. So he is somebody that people definitely want in their franchises. They want to bring him along to say, "Hey, your name itself is going to put butts in seats." When it comes to Star Wars though, I honestly don't think he's going to take it serious enough to make it a priority. And because of that, I don't think it'll ever be made. That is just my opinion. Unless they legitimately say, "Hey, you cannot work on anything else until you finish the Star Wars movie." Um, Sean Levy, on the other hand, uh, we saw him nerd out when he was finally able to talk about this.
Yes.
He is so ready to do this. We've joked around about seeing Ryan Reynolds in a Star Wars film. I don't think the world is ready for that, but I think we're going to see it. Uh, and we'll see how it goes. I'm really curious to see how his script is coming along and what it turns into. Um, I have loved I so far in recent years, I have loved almost everything that Sean Levy has touched. So
Yes,
that's
and
my opinion.
excuse me. I said Free Guy was directed by Taika. It
It
was
was
directed by Sean
Sean,
Levy.
yeah,
Excuse me.
but
I'm
Taika was in
sorry.
it. Taika was in it,
Yes.
so there's that.
All right. So, are we ready to dive in to what some people are calling an utter masterpiece of Star Wars and the best thing to ever happen to Star Wars? And some people are like, what the fuck was that?
Uh, I saw somebody on TikTok go as far as to say this is the best Star Wars that has ever happened to Star Wars since the prequels. And I like I had to stop for a second and process that statement. Um cuz let's get into this. Let's get into this. This is of course episode 5 of Ahsoka. This episode is titled
Shadow Warrior.
Shadow Warrior. Uh, this episode was something that people were very excited about. Of course, we all know how episode 4 ended. Um, and of course, this episode was released in theaters. So people were like, Star Wars is back in theaters, baby. Like, this is it. Like,
Yeah.
this is what's gonna bring us all back home, and this is gonna be amazing and everything else. Um, Katie, I have a feeling. Well, I don't have. It's not a feeling because I know how you feel already because we briefly talked in the Geekverse Ahsoka spoiler chat. Uh, you really liked this episode.
Okay, I I didn't say really liked. When I did my review last night, I gave it an 8.5 out of 10. Just go on ahead and throw that out there. The writing, I feel like this needed to be 2 episodes.
Yes,
One with the world between worlds stuff, or the vision, the dream, and the lake, whatever we want to call it. And then the Ahsoka recovers, let's go find Sabine part. It would have been 2 really short episodes. But I think the difference in how things were handled um is super important to like make that distinction because it feels segregated.
it it was it felt very much like two different episodes, and I agree with you. I think that even if you had to stretch that script out, which I think would have possibly turned it into a worse episode. Um, you should have split the two because tonally those two are very separate. When you cut the episode in half, the way that you were saying, the world in between world stuff, and then uh the plot part of this show was really all at the end. Um and that's one of my biggest issues. I'm gonna go ahead and this happens very rarely. So Snell, you better save this clip.
We all know he's not going to listen anyways.
He's not gonna listen, but he's right when it comes to his opinion on this episode. I visually love this episode. There are shots in this episode that he is in the chat saying recording it now for podcast listeners. Um there are shots in this episode that I need as either my wallpaper here on this computer or as a literal poster on my wall. There are shots in this episode that look amazing, but that's all it is that it's there to look pretty. And
Hardcore disagree. Hardcore disagree.
no, and Katie, I know that the big discussion in the spoiler chat was the conversation that Anakin and Ahsoka had. So let's go ahead and talk about that first.
And to get this point out of the water, I will always be a fan of when there's character moments, even when the plot progression is left behind. I think that's something that The Mandalorian has constantly failed at, is not dedicating enough to characters while just having fluff episodes. I don't consider this a fluff episode at all whatsoever in the way I consider some of the Mandalorian episodes fluff.
So I won't call this a fluff episode. What I will call this is uh, a filler episode. This
I
is a
wouldn't even
fill.
call it that.
This is a filler episode. This is something that it says, "Hey, take a break, have fun. Here's some memories." That plot stuff, it's not important today. With so much that had happened in the last episode, you're hitting a brick wall in this episode. Um,
But you moved Ahsoka forward so much. Would you not agree that
but
the portrayal that Rosario would
but
you not agree
you
that the portrayal that if Rosario Dawson gives us one Ahsoka at the front half of the episode, and then at the back half, it feels like Clone Wars Ahsoka again. Like she has confidence in herself to make decisions. I can guarantee you, if she hadn't had that vision in the lake, because we're gonna get to that, but the vision in the lake, if she hadn't had that, I don't know if she would have gone to the Purgles. It opened her mind to the possibilities, and also being open to she didn't get pissed off when she figures out that Sabine went off with Balin and Shin to go find Ezra instead of destroying the map. She didn't like get pissed like I thought she would have, because that's what she does when Sabine runs off with the map in episode 1 or 2, whichever episode. But
yeah,
that is a completely different Ahsoka right there. Like that matters to the plot.
I I do agree that Ahsoka went through something that changes her from the beginning of the episode to the end. That is true. But I feel like what we had to go through wasn't really worth it, and that the visualization of her ultimate lesson, like, I didn't need, like, you didn't need to be like, "Hey, we need to bring Anakin back in here. We need to show Rex." Like, that doesn't really show you anything. Like, this whole idea, because, like, yes, like, they had the conversation about, "Hey, I'm making you into a warrior. Like, if you don't fight, you will die." And like that's the whole meaning of this whole thing that Ahsoka has been through her entire life. Is she has just been surviving. She has not lived. She has not like her whole point of leaving the Jedi Order was, hey, like I can't go any further through this, but she still kept her relationships with her and Anakin like close by, and it kind of like screwed her. Like it fucked with her head. Like that's the whole reason why she is who she is today. And for me, I thought, okay, like as soon as she fell and I saw like the purple smoke and everything, the first glimmer of a clone trooper, I was like, "Oh shit, we're doing this." And then the more I watched it, I was like, "This is boring as hell. I'm not learning anything. Like
Okay,
there's nothing here."
I was completely on the same page on the first watch through because it was not face value. And when I got into the second watch last night, I learned so much more about what was actually going on. Ahsoka didn't like those conversations with Anakin wasn't about what was in the moment. It was about facing her fears about what was named, but what she's been facing since she found out that Anakin was Darth Vader in Rebels. You can't tell me that when, and obviously we haven't seen her, but the Ahsoka we got in Mandalorian and Boba Fett, everyone was like, what the hell happened to Ahsoka? And those are the only times, other than the finale of Rebels, that we've seen her after she got pulled out of Malachor and got
Hmm.
saved and everything.
Yeah.
Those are the only times we've really seen her have personality. Everyone was like, what is this stick up Ahsoka's butt? So Balin might have named that she's afraid of her legacy with the death and destruction that has encompassed Anakin as a Jedi, as a dark side user. Like, but that is what has haunted her this entire time. Like, so to see that resolution was super important for her. And she goes back to the very beginning because it's a reminder that yes, you were trained for peace, but in some cases that has to change. And that final flashback for the Siege of Mandalore, and I want to talk about visuals later. I want to talk about the story like right now because like I hardcore disagree. And I'm trying not to berate you too, but like the Siege of Mandalore, like for her to have Anakin, what she thinks is Anakin, see what she was doing instead of being alongside his side and preventing him from going to the dark side, that was important because like it's the whole thing where she didn't learn, like he did not fall to the dark side because of her. That was the whole point of this, is to kind
Yeah.
of like get the beginning and ending of their relationship and then have that confrontation of where she can realize that she wants to live and she wants to fight, but it's also because like the death and destruction is not her legacy. She needs to go back to the Clone Wars Ahsoka, who's learned from Anakin that you can manipulate rules and kind of work within the boundaries while still following the rules, but manipulating things so that you can survive and you can build awesome relationships. That's why she left Sabine the first time. I guarantee it is because she was building a relationship and she was scared of passing on her legacy. So like that's like the whole thing. And yeah.
No, I can definitely see that. Like for me though, one of the biggest things that we had discussed before the flashbacks were even a thing was, I said, if we see a flashback of anything Clone Wars related, it needed to be new footage. Technically, yes, this is new footage, but the Siege of Mandalore, something that we already saw. Like we've seen that before. Like the extra fighting of the Mandalorians, like you could say, oh, but that's new. It's like, it's only new so much, you know.
Mhm.
The uh, the random fights that we saw her, with Anakin, they were so clouded you can't really tell where they are. It's just they're in a battlefield, and all you know is it's one of her first missions. Is
And
what she says.
I think that first mission, I don't think we have footage of that. Because I went back, the only thing I could think of was that it was the Ryloth arc in the first season.
Hmm.
Um, because of all the Twi'leks. That's the only reason that I kind of placed where that was.
Okay.
Um, but I don't think we actually saw that because she talks about like her leadership capabilities and how she got a bunch of guys killed, but that was actually in space. It was not on the battlefield, which space could be a
Okay.
battlefield. So I don't think we actually saw the first fight.
Yeah.
And now, obviously, the Siege of Mandalore is a retread, but I think it was worth it to kind of get Anakin's perspective. And Anakin in this case is totally a demon that Ahsoka's facing in her
Yeah.
near death
and
experience.
and
I,
that was kind of another thing that's really disappointing is this demon, this inner demon that Ahsoka is fighting or whatever, or confronting with whatever. Um, Also kind of just like puts a bad taste in my mouth because like this whole thing of like having a conversation with him and he kind of leaves her with this like, oh, so you have learned something, you still got a lot left in you, like, go get him type thing. It means nothing because that's not Anakin. That's not his Force Ghost. That's not Anakin from the past. That's It doesn't mean like that's you're your own hype man at this point, Ahsoka, and that's kind of okay. Like I like the idea of using Anakin for this. It's just like I didn't need it. Like you could have used in that perspective, you could have used anybody.
Who would you have put there instead?
You could have used Rex. You could have used Obi-Wan Kenobi. You could have used
Ahsoka
uh
doesn't have the relationship with Obi-Wan for that. And like Rex, yes, Rex taught her a lot, but Rex has always been a hype man. She needed that master apprentice relationship. And yes, it's all in her head. And yes, this was what the demon that was talking to her. But Rex is never going to come off as a demon to Ahsoka. That was never going to play well. And I think Anakin doing it plays off with the Snip's perspective, but also allows her to kind of talk to herself because I mean, we hear Anakin say it like, you are everything I am and more. Like that was what all the teaching was supposed to be about.
and I think again, one of the things that we've talked about before, and I guess this episode was I was definitely a victim of this, was the overhype. When we saw Anakin, there was a lot of
Mhm.
people that uh threw out their theories, and man, were they wild. I will say, um be careful with My Time to Shine. It looks like she is throwing random shit out there just to get money nowadays. Because she was way off. And I think she just threw something out there that she saw on TikTok. Um,
What did she say? Because I didn't see it because I was
that Anakin was basically the
Mhm.
father. Um,
Yeah, I saw that a lot. I saw that as a lot of theories. I hadn't seen that as like a
there was a
report.
lot of theories that Anakin had taken the place of the father and was basically like the god of the Force, basically. Um, and honestly, like I was really wanting something like that to happen just because I wanted I wanted Star Wars to step out of its comfort zone. And I wanted it to be a little bit more fantastical and go into that realm of fantasy rather than just being Lucasfilm Star Wars, you know? Um
Yeah.
at that point I would have been like, okay, like cool. Like this isn't Lucas's Star Wars anymore, guys. Let's buckle up and see what's going to happen. Um and again,
I
go ahead.
and I think that was why my first watch was a little down as well because I felt and that was the same thing that happened with Rise of Skywalker is there was a lot of hype, a lot of buildup, and then it didn't match up to expectations. So then you
Yeah.
go in with a clean mind, knowing what you're expecting in the second watch, and things clean up a lot. So
And I can I can step back and say, okay, what I wanted isn't here clearly. I'm okay with this. Let's move forward. Because I think everything else in the episode was good enough for me to say, okay, we're back on track. Now, um, I'm still very confused. What is up with this thing with Hera being able to hear the Force? Again, we've talked about how anybody, as well as long as they are open to it, blah blah. But like, this is supposed to be Jason's moment. This whole thing of like, oh, I can do this. David
let's talk
says,
about what David said. He said Ahsoka got great character beats that touches on her insecurities and why she abandoned being a master. Jason was built for future plot slash story usage. Um, and so I completely agree with Jason's kind of being built up for a future usage. Um, I and I think it kind of goes hand in hand with the mystery of this vision. We Ahsoka looks like she's in the world between worlds, but I think it's clear by the end of it, at least, she's not really there. And that this is kind of just where her mind put her in the end of
exact,
things.
which is why it's so confusing to why Jason he like hears slash feels this happening. Like again, like I understand that those who are connected with the Force are then connected to each other, Like that's a really big thing in Star Wars. You see it in Clone Wars and other movies and everything else. When somebody's in danger, they know they are in danger. This nothing really connected because we as the viewer, we think, "Oh, she's in the world between worlds. This is cool."
Yeah.
And then at the end of the show, we're like, "Oh, she's drowning. Not cool." Like it it didn't really make sense. And then when the point where you see Jason where he's like, "Oh, mom, do you hear that? It's" she's like, "What, the waves?" She's like, "No, the lightsabers." And they stand there and they listen and they listen and they listen, and then eventually, I really love how they do this. They overlap the ocean and the waves and the crashes to the shore on top of the acoustics of a lightsaber battle, which I really really liked. For the sound, but for the story reasons, it doesn't really make sense.
Okay, but we also don't see what Ahsoka's doing, like, in the water. If she's not in the world between worlds, like, her being in the water, she has, like, the one lightsaber and then or sorry, Matt's texting me theories. Um, and it's distracting me. Um, so she's fighting Anakin primarily with one lightsaber. I'm 95% sure she only ever uses the lightsaber and not the Shoto that she has.
Correct.
So what if it was kind of like a battle with herself and she was fighting the Shoto?
Uh, no, I'm not gonna buy that. I'm sorry. It because it sounded too fluid to be a actual lightsaber fight with even in water. Like it sounded too fluid and it just doesn't make any sense. Again, this is space wizardry and it's not supposed to make sense, but like it makes sense to a point. Like there's rules within the universe, and that one just
And
like
it, but
it felt a little weird.
I think it's also like with like the Clone Wars you brought up. Like people can kind of maybe have a sense of what's going on in somebody else's head. So maybe he's hearing that and kind of opening it up so Hera can potentially listen to it. Um, Matt said here, he said that it might actually be the spirit of Anakin and not just in her head. Ahsoka said, I won't fight you, and Anakin said, I've heard that before. And that could be potentially referencing what Luke
Well,
said to him.
and also there's this thing. Great call, by the way, Matt. Just want to go ahead and shout that out. I didn't even catch that one,
But
but
I think also Ahsoka could have potentially talked with Luke about their fight, and that's what could have come up.
true. But then also this, let's bring back the whole Force Ghost idea. Like he the very first thing he says at the end of episode 4 is, "I wasn't expecting you so soon."
Mhm.
Now again, this can be Ahsoka's mind being like, "Oh, you're finally gonna confront this? Like we're finally gonna have this talk, talking to yourself
I
kind
more
of
took
thing."
that as like death kind of thing, especially with like, oh, do you
Yes, like
remember the fight?
and I think that's what a lot of people thought. A lot of people were like, "Oh, is she dead? If she's dead, that's definitely Force Ghost, whatever." But a lot of people thought, "Okay, this is the world between worlds." And if that's the case, like why is he saying like cuz this is how all the theory like I watched every single person on TikTok talk about this. And because I was just curious on how the general public and some nerds would think of this story arc and what they were anticipating for episode 5. And a lot of people were hanging on those words. Oh, I wasn't expecting you so soon. Well, if you weren't expecting her so soon, does that mean you didn't pull her into the world between worlds? Now we know it wasn't the world between worlds, but was it? There's still so many like answers that still like so many questions that still need to be answered. Because one thing that I have learned through other interviews that Dave Filoni has put out there that a lot of people are pointing out for this in particular arc is that Dave Filoni likes to leave things up into interpretation.
Yep.
And for me, I hate, I hate when filmmakers and writers do this because you let anybody and everybody be right. And it's
The
like,
only time
no.
it has been done well is with Christopher Nolan and Inception.
Yes,
This is the only time.
that's the only time that it has been done correctly. When you say, "Hey, we leave it up for interpretation. It's whatever you want." Blah blah. It makes the story plot such a mess. Like it makes the scenes like this make no sense. Like, is it
Yep.
him or is it not him? Is it a force ghost? Is it not a force ghost? Like people were so stuck. Oh, Travis is talking about the movies he's going to be making over at the Geekverse. But the whole idea, like another plot point that people were so focused on was like, oh, is that really Anakin Skywalker's lightsaber that's hanging on to his waist? It's too dark to be his. Like, it's actually dark enough to be Darth Vader's. And it's like people were thinking, oh, it's actually Darth Vader sending in some sort of force projection to lure Ahsoka back to, their fight back in the third season of it's like, guys, just calm down and just watch the show. And now, granted, watching the show, again, I said there's this scene where after Anakin tells her, well, if you don't fight, you'll die. And then he marches on with the other clone troopers into the battle and a huge explosion goes off and it flickers into Darth
So
Vader
badass.
and then it flickers back to Anakin. Oh, that was one of the best shots I have ever seen in Star Wars.
The World Between Worlds one is also very good
When he
when
is walking up and he glitches into Darth Vader. Yeah,
yeah.
I really like that shot as well. And I
But
think
seeing
those are really cool, but it just like it frustrates me that it's like there's no clear answer to like for me, I will not agree that saying, "Oh, that was all in her head," is a good story plot. It's not. That's just me though.
I think we've had this discussion several times. Sometimes your own worst enemy is yourself. And for me, like I know that's very true for myself, is like I can get in the way of myself so many times. And I think that's why I'm more open to it, is because I just know that that happens. And my own worst enemy is myself. Um, Kind of going back to the looks of the Clone Wars scenes, I loved seeing Hayden in Clone Wars armor. The haircut though for Clone Wars Anakin didn't
I
really work for him.
I was gonna ask if how'd you like the haircut? I think that it needed a little bit more mullet in the back.
Yeah. More
Um,
volume.
because he still looked again, Anakin is supposed to be the pretty boy, but it like it looked too clean. It looked too clean
Yeah.
in those first few shots. Um I
I
really
think
like the visual metaphor when they're fighting when he is Darth Vader with the red
mhm,
lightsaber and Ahsoka comes in on him and like her face is glowing red and her
her
eyes turn
eyes turned and
orange.
everything. Yeah.
Like I love that because when it comes to the story of Ahsoka and of Rey and of Cal Kestis, all of these new Jedi that don't necessarily have the reins of the Jedi Council to be like, hey, well, like hold back here, like, hey, settle down there. Like they make their own rules these days. And that's kind of scary and kind of dangerous at the same time. But with Ahsoka, the whole conversation, this whole lesson was, hey, I have the ability to do this, but I'm choosing not to. Like, yeah,
Mhm,
I can be an evil badass with two lightsabers and rule the galaxy. Guess what? I'm not going to.
yeah.
But just seeing it for a split second, you're just like, yes, this is so awesome.
What if Ahsoka went bad? Huh.
Exactly.
The
And
rumored thing that was gonna come out of episode 5.
again, there was so many theories and so many rumors. Like there was one that went along the same lines. Basically, this is actually Sidious that is trying to lure Ahsoka and turn her to the
Yeah.
dark side. Was one of the theories that I had heard. Um,
Yeah.
it's a wild time, guys, and I think for me, Travis, he's in the chat. He knows this, and listening to it more again, watching these interviews with Dave Filoni, the World Between Worlds was never supposed to be a time travel gimmick. It was never supposed to be. Do I want it to be? Yes. Is it going to happen? No. The way it's explained is that this is a place where every focal point in Star Wars meets. That's it. There's nothing special about it. Like he explains, Filoni explains, the whole idea of Ahsoka being pulled. Like there was never a time where she wasn't pulled. That was always supposed to happen. And the same thing with Kanan. Like we see in the show in Rebels where like freaking Ezra is about to pull him and he's questioning whether he can or not. And Ahsoka's like, if you do that, you're dead. And then you can't even contemplate the fact that you're wanting to pull him out here. So
Yep.
it doesn't make any sense. Like they aren't wanting to introduce time travel, which kind of like is a big downer on my part, just because I love the World Between Worlds gimmick altogether. But to just flash it here as like, oh, this is my little mind palace where I'm gonna learn my lesson is also kind of a slap in the face to me. Like that is just like it.
But, like, with what we know, that was the last time Ahsoka also almost was at the edge of death. So it kind of
Yes.
makes sense for her to go back to it, I think, um, and kind of continue to imagine that as like, "Oh, this is where I go to die before I die," kind of thing.
Yeah.
Um, I still think the World Between Worlds look of everything was awesome. Just kind of getting to see it in the little bridges with all like the footsteps and everything looked awesome. I'm gonna disagree with you about the smokiness of the Clone Wars. And maybe that's just because I headcanon it immediately, where I was like, okay, well, she's 45 years old now, and she was 13 at the time of this battle. So maybe that's why it's a little more fuzzy than
She can't
um
remember.
I y'all, I can hang kid the shit out of anything, okay? We talked about this. But like I'm just saying that was my explanation for it, like
Okay, but what
immediately.
was your explanation of the CGI Mandalorians?
I didn't know they were CGI. I saw somebody on Twitter say that about 20 minutes before we started the podcast. And I was like, that's CGI? I had
I
no idea.
I'm I'm
No
pretty
idea.
sure that it's CGI. I think maybe one or two are real or practical, but the ones that she like actually slashes down on, I think those are pure CGI.
I had no idea. Um it was cool seeing the Super Mall troopers in um the Siege of Mandalore, and obviously getting to see Tamura, not see, but hear Tamura Morrison take over the captain slash commander because they do put that in the ending credits. Captain slash Commander Rex,
Oh wow.
Tamura Morrison. So they did the details with that because he's a commander in the Siege of Mandalore. Um, so I think that was pretty cool, and it gives me more hope that we could see a Rex Ahsoka reuniting in live action. I think that'd be cool. But again, that would probably be a little more fan servicey again. Um
It I because at this point you want to know, is he alive at this
yeah.
point? There is of course the theory of Rex being on the Battle of Endor, uh, which I don't know if they've actually made
I
that
think that was
into.
disproven.
Okay. I wasn't sure if like somebody was like, yeah, sure, why not? And then like made it canon or whatever. But I would like to see if he is still out there. We know that we lost. Who did we lose in Rebels? That was part of that crew. That was
Kanan, which does
well,
get him, who does get a mention.
Kanan, yes, but I mean, the small group of clones in Rebels. I believe two of them died.
Gregor dies, and I think Captain Wolf is the only
Wolf
one
is
left
the only one. Yeah, yeah.
with Rex. But yeah.
Oh, is he the only one left? I thought he was one of the last ones to die.
I don't think Wolf died.
Yeah, I'm not entirely. I can't remember. I thought two of the
Okay.
four, because I'm pretty sure was there four or three. Now I can't remember.
So yeah, his Wikipedia, it was just Gregor, Wolf, and Rex.
Okay, okay, okay.
Um, and Wolf does not currently have a dead date.
Okay, so yeah, it was Gregor that died at the end of Rebels. Um, but yeah, like I'm curious to see if Rex will make an appearance with the transformation into Ahsoka the White, as some people are calling her.
Yes, okay.
Uh,
Have we finished with the front half of the episode? Let's like
I
mark a
I,
boundary.
I believe we have finished with the front half.
Good point for an ad break too. Okay, so the back half of the episode, like you said, this is mostly the plot focused point of the episode. So in that regard, we do see Ahsoka the White come to play, and also a headpiece-less Ahsoka as she's resting. That did that throw you off? Because that threw me off.
It threw me off a little bit. I felt like I was looking at something naked, and I was like, "This is weird in Star Wars." I don't know if I should be averting my eyes or like what, but it was like seeing that much arm on her as well. Like it looked weird because I know in there. Okay, so Dawson is like she is fit,
Yeah.
but seeing her arms while she was, like, waking up, I was like, "Why is she so tiny? What is this?" What, like and then like, she just looked weird. It looked out of place. I was just like, "I'm a little uncomfortable right now, like, I'm gonna give her her space," type of thing.
Yeah.
Like, "You get dressed and we'll be good." It did look a little weird. It did look a little weird.
Um, so her transformation in this, does this give you like an inclination that maybe the Rebels epilogue is actually after this? Because
So,
it
I
was
saw you bring
replicated.
I saw you bring this up. This is very confusing. Um, because we see the quote unquote replicated scene from the end of Rebels at the beginning of this season. We see
Yeah,
it with Sabine walking up to the mural, putting her hand on it, walking towards Ahsoka and Huang. Of course, Huang wasn't in the Rebels episode,
right.
but they walk towards the ship, and that's the end of the season. Here, we know that Ahsoka wasn't wearing the pure white robe and she didn't have the staff.
Right.
That was the really big thing in Rebels was the staff. Um I if they do that, that's going to make it even more confusing. It and like I I don't know. I don't know. Like I it just wouldn't make any sense. Like
I know, but every single time in these shows, Star Wars has kind of stuck to, okay, this is your costume. You wear this every single day. You have 9,000 jumpsuits in this color, kind of thing.
yeah.
Why would you change her costume now? And not just her costume, but her headpiece also changes. She's wearing a different headpiece as well.
Yes. Yes.
and if you're listening, don't give me the, oh well, she was in the water, they had to change her, maybe her clothes didn't dry all the way. That's not how this works in Star Wars. It's never how this works in Star Wars.
Yeah, you
The
can't really
costume
use
changed for a reason.
you can't use that excuse in Star Wars. Like when people go into bangta tanks and like come out completely dry and it doesn't make any like you can't put that kind of logic into Star Wars. You can't. Absolutely cannot. Um but her wardrobe change. I think it is definitely supposed to be this overall like it's a new me, new year, new me type of thing.
Mm.
Um And I don't think we got the full focal point of it either. Because yeah, we got a glimmer of it. I did like the line like, "Oh, do we think the Purgle's really going to help us find Ezra?" She's like, "I don't know,
Yes.
but we'll find out if it does." Like that is an Ahsoka Anakin line. Like that, I was like,
Oh,
"Okay, that's pretty fun.
and I
I
think
can't
I
wait."
think I think that's what convinced me is like to the whole transformation thing, and like she feels brighter and happier, and like Ahsoka's smiling. Like we saw her like grin in a couple scenes of the first 4 episodes, but like she smiles with her teeth.
Do you think we'll see less of the arms crossed across the chest, or is
I
that
think
still going to
so.
be a thing?
I think so.
Yeah.
Now she might do this and be like, but like the it'll reach her eyes kind of thing where she's like joking with it.
Okay. I I don't know how I feel at the end of this episode. Um Again, I'm ready for the next. I am ready to like I'm even more convinced because we were also talking about this in the Geekverse Discord. So if you guys are not a part of that, check out the information down below. You should be able to find a link there. Um, I am convinced the one shot of Thrawn that we got in the trailer is the last episode.
Well, and Daniel RPK apparently put out again today that uh Ahsoka season 2 has already been planned and everything. So,
Yeah, I have a strong inkling that like this is like purely an Ahsoka show, and like there's even more people that are like so upset that that Zeb hasn't shown up yet, or
I like Carson, and I think he did really well in this episode, especially with like the pressure on everything and just kind of being like, "Hey, the New Republic's still here," kind of thing. I wish it was them because we know that that Carson works with them and is at the
mhm.
same outpost. Why isn't it Zeb? Or why didn't Zeb tag along?
Yeah, like that itself, like that would have felt so much more organic to this show. Um, this whole thing of like, oh, you don't necessarily have to watch Rebels. Sorry guys. Like I'm really curious to see like it Ansley yeah, Ainsley
Madeline.
Madeline is the one that
Madeline
hasn't
hasn't seen Rebels. Ansley has seen Rebels.
Ansley has seen Rebels. Okay. Okay. Still want to hear her opinion on all of this.
I'll send
But
her a text.
but like I really feel like even the Jason stuff in this episode. Like I saw a meme that when Carson was like, "Did I miss anything?" Like there was another photo of Huang holding out the full box set of Rebels saying, "Oh, you missed this." And like you don't understand any of that unless you've seen Rebels. Which by the way, I
Yep.
don't know if you missed this or not. There is a picture of Kanan
I
on
saw that.
on the pilot's console were on the Ghost.
I saw pictures of it. I did not pay attention to it in the episode. I forgot.
Yeah, I've been seeing all of these little fun Easter egg things on TikTok and Twitter. So I thought that
Yeah.
was really, really cool. Um, but
I
yeah.
found it interesting that Yang referred to Kanan as Kanan and not Caleb.
Oh, that's true. Because he was known as Caleb as a Padawan.
Yep, yep.
Hmm. Maybe
I
that's
just found that
just with
interesting.
I think that's more so with the relationship that he now has with this merry group of individuals,
Yeah.
possibly.
That and that's what I thought was, like, he referred to him a couple times as Caleb, and Hera was like, "No, he's Kaden,"
You
and,
know.
like, threatened to, like, take him apart. Or maybe Chopper did, who knows? Uh, but yeah, that was I found it interesting, but yeah, the explanation's really easy, I think.
Yeah.
Um, uh, Leia Organa gets mentioned, Senator Organa.
Mhm.
I saw a lot of people saying the quote with General Organa. I went back and looked, and now I went back and looked, but I don't remember again. But I'm fairly certain it's Senator Organa and not General Organa in that case.
I would have to go back. I only got one viewing of this episode. I do wanna watch it again, to see if my opinion has changed over the flashback episodes or not. Um, but I'll have to see with that scene in particular. Trying to think of anything else in this episode. We see Ahsoka get rescued from the waters of what is
Yep.
this planet called again? Uh
Satos.
Satos. And of course they, explain they find out that Sabina's with them. And this is where the Purgles come in, like we said. Uh I was very confused at the size of these Purgles because
Yeah, they varied.
they varied a lot. The Purgles that they saw when they flew into the planet were freaking huge, so much so
Yep.
that their freaking starships were like freaking dots compared to these Purgles. And
Yep.
then now their ships are practically the same size as some of these Purgles. And then a huge one comes along and they're like, "Oh, I think that's the biggest one of this group." I was like, "That
Yeah.
doesn't make any sense." Like maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. I'm not a huge Purgle expert, but it just I noticed the difference for sure.
Yep.
So
Definitely.
I think it's very cool of this idea to use the migration of David was correct in his assumptions. The migration map of the Purgles will eventually
Yep.
get them to where they need to be. Um do they get their next episode? We only have what,
So,
3 episodes left?
yes. I'm gonna disagree with you that the shots of Thrawn are only from the last episode. I'm thinking last 2. I'm not thinking we're gonna get Ezra and Thrawn next episode, but I'm thinking it's gonna be last 2. Because we see Thrawn's face for the first time, and he's got a black background behind him. And the only part of that hyperspace room we've seen is that gold room where we saw the first shot with the back of his head. Because remember, I think his face was first in the leaked trailer, and then it finally came out, and we talked about the coloring of Thrawn and like the lack of contour.
Yes, but I think it's the same room, just the camera either pointing directly at him or from underneath him. I am pretty
Well,
sure.
okay,
I may be wrong, but I feel like it is the same room.
it's uh, okay. Present. I don't think that's the same room.
Maybe not. Hmm.
that actually looks like, so you know how people were theorizing that Balin was after the Lothal temple stones that were in the Chimera?
Yeah.
That looks like the Mortis artwork behind him.
Oh, okay. Okay.
I just don't think this lighting is the same room as the hyper ring. I it doesn't look like the hyper ring to me because we saw the front of it with the space uh ports in this episode, but then we also saw the back of it when Shin, Balin, and Sabine all walk in. We saw like the turbo lift and everything.
Yeah.
So the lighting in that room is pristine. And in this photo,
It's very
it
dark.
doesn't,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I'm convinced it's not the same room. So he might be in 2 episodes, 2 different rooms.
And it might be that maybe that is like we're going to get maybe like one of the what is it called? Like the starting of the episode, we're going to get him and Ezra talking together and then the rest of the episode is going to be about finding them kind of thing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, like the cold room or a
Yeah,
cold
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 open.
open. Yeah. Yeah.
The only thing else other than the writing, and this isn't necessarily like a nitpick on the episode, but I don't like that Hera can't go with Ahsoka. I did not like that.
I've seen this discourse as well. I've seen this idea that she is more so like a B plot story developer. Um the show isn't called Hera. It's called Ahsoka. Um
I know, but especially with Sabine gone, I wanted her to be able to go.
I think it would only make sense to have somebody consistently with the Rebels team there with Ahsoka. Um but we're going to get Sabine back. It's not like Sabine is gone. Um and we saw this episode that Hera kind of made a mess for herself, so she does have to clean that up. Um I think if again, with season 2 being rumored and everything else, we have no idea how this is going to end. But if Ezra does return, there needs to be a scene that puts Hera and Ezra at the focal point
Mm-hmm.
because there's this indication, you know, Jason's like, oh, like, because they tell him to go on the ship. He's like, I've seen ships before. Like, I'm not gonna go on the ship. And Ahsoka's like, oh, have you seen a Jedi ship? A Jedi ship? Yeah, let's go, let's go, let's go. And Hugh Wang takes him, and he's like, wait, you've trained Jedi? He's like, yeah. Are you gonna train me? No. Can I see? Do you know how to build a lightsaber? Yes. Can you help me build a lightsaber? No. And so there is this very big inclination or indication that Jason, of course, has force abilities and he's going to be a future Jedi. And so there's been a discussion online as well. Who should train Jason? I personally think it
I don't
should be
give two
Ezra.
shits.
I don't care who it ultimately will be, but if you want my 2 cents, I say it should be Ezra. That's me personally. It could be Sabine, it could be Ahsoka, it could be Huang. Who I would personally want would be Ezra. I think that has a little bit more emotional weight to it. Um, and I would just like for that to happen. Again, we have no idea if Ezra is even alive. So we'll get there when we get there. But
I I think for me, especially with where Hera is in the New Republic and working with the upper class senators and everything, I think they would push for Jason to be a part of Luke's school. Um, and so kind of getting trained by the book and setting that example for the rest of the New Republic and doing things the right way when you've got a powerful force user. Um, again, is that the right way? But no, but I think that's that would be the answer for a lot of people, especially with the mention we got of Leia in this episode. Um, I just think and especially with what's coming up against her with the Senate committee, like going for her command, like they're totally going to try and get her to do things by the book.
Yeah. There's like I'm even scrolling Twitter now, looking at the Ahsoka hashtag. There's somebody says here, "Nerd alert!" Tweet: If Ahsoka is indeed making Anakin Skywalker the last Mortis god, then Dave Filoni fixed a massive issue in Star Wars and repaired the seemingly discarding of Anakin's importance in the mythos. Like people are so fixated on these things, uh, and I don't think they
Star Wars fans
discarded
are the worst.
they are. I don't think they discarded the importance of Anakin Skywalker. He's
Yep.
just not alive, so therefore not important very much anymore.
Hmm.
That's just the way things go. Sorry. Um, but yeah, that's all of my opinions on this episode. Again, visually thought it was amazing. Had issues with the flashback scenes because I did think that a lot of it was with the fan service. I needed a little bit more development. I needed a little bit more importance on that conversation, other than just like because the a lot of people also were like, they finally get closure. They did, but kind of didn't at the same time.
Ahsoka got closure. Anakin didn't.
Exactly. I like there's still something missing in these scenes, and
Hmm.
I would like to see that. Um does this leave me with some hope that we might get a Force Ghost Anakin? Maybe, but what do you think? Before we close it out here, do we think we do still have book club, but
I
uh
don't remember which story we're on. Do you remember which story we're on?
I think I remember which story we're on. I would just have to double check. But uh if you had to put money down right now, we have 3 episodes left. Is there more Anakin Skywalker or no?
I don't think so.
No?
I don't think
Okay.
so. I I could maybe see it for like the end of the Heir to the Empire movie. Um, but I don't see it in this season of Ahsoka.
Okay. That makes sense.
Also, we didn't talk about her at all, but Ariana Greenblatt did an incredible job as a young Ahsoka. Um,
Yes. If
and
if if
reminding us all that Ahsoka is a child soldier.
if nobody knows where she is from, she is recently, of course, in the Barbie movie. She was in Marvel's
65?
Avengers Endgame. She was in Endgame. She played the child Gamora. In
That was Infinity War.
uh, Same difference. Uh, what else was she in? She was in
65.
65. She was in I believe. Oh shoot. There was a Disney Channel show that she was on with Jenna Ortega. Uh I think it's always in the middle. Is the
Stuck in the middle.
stuck in the middle. Again, same difference.
Mhm.
Uh and now this. Like she has done an amazing job with such a young career. Um
Yeah.
and I cannot wait to see her in other stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah, amazing actress.
So, everybody knows my rating already, but what would you rate this out of 10?
Out of 10, I would give this a 7 flat as of right now. Um, Watching it again after this conversation, I might be able to give it a little bit more, maybe a little bit less. I'm not entirely sure yet. Um, like I said, visually thought it was beautiful. I liked the ending. Felt very Clone Wars. Um, and I do look forward to the rest of the series. So it did not end on a bad note. There was just a lot of missed opportunities in my mind for this episode.
I can understand that. All right, can we take a quick pause?
Yes, yes, I will go ahead and write this down. All right. So Katie will be back here in just a second. I am setting up for the last part of our book club. Book club is, of course, the uh, from a certain point of view, Return of the Jedi. We talk about 5 stories each and every week. This week we are talking about. Oh my gosh, where are we? We ah, the burden of leadership is where we are. So I want to thank you guys if you are still watching here on the YouTube. Thank you very, very much. Katie shouldn't be too long now. And of course, podcasters won't hear this because I'll cut all of this sweet out. You're going strong for a full hour and a half. Not bad, not bad.
Okay, I'm ready.
All right. So going to start right now. All right. So on to our book club, of course, which is from a certain point of view, Return of the Jedi. We are talking about 5 stories each and every week. This week, we are starting with The Burden of Leadership by Danny Lore. This is the um, uh, 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 Lando story,
Yes.
Lando Calrissian story. So,
All
Katie,
right.
first thoughts on the burden of leadership.
So for me, I thought this built some good connections between the movie Lando and the Lando that we've been getting in the main run of Star Wars, the Star Wars comic right now. Um Ultimately it wasn't my favorite, but I still thought it was good.
I really like this story because it builds upon what we know about Lando with how he he ran Cloud City and like he brought these people into the rebellion, but like we all know because of who Lando is individually, like is he going to necessarily like hang out with the best crowd of people? So are these really the best kind of people to be in a rebellion against the empire? And how like it's a story about like hell, we're all scared. We're all possibly going to die tomorrow, but we're
Yep.
going to fight for our freedom. And like these individuals are like yelling at Lando like, yeah, like we may live tomorrow. I might actually die tomorrow. You can't guarantee any of that stuff. And
Yep.
I love how Calrissian takes this conversation as like a focal point of like, I need to play this like a game of sabacc. I need
Mhm.
to show them exactly what they need to see, but not too much. I don't need to be all suave with them. I need to, give it to them straight, but also hide a little bit of my fear so that way they can actually stay with me and listen to me as this leader that they have put upon me, this leadership that they put upon me. I really dug this. I really did like this. Again, ultimately, we talked about our top fives. Ultimately, I think it came out to like top eights or top tens in our review. Go check it out.
Honorable mentions.
Honorable mentions, yes. Um, it didn't make it onto there, but it's still a very good story, and I really did enjoy it.
Yeah. I think author Danny Lore did a really good job just kind of hitting the points that he needed to, for sure.
Yeah.
The next one on our list is actually the one that we talked about in kind of our news piece. It's Gone to the Winner's Circle by Patricia A. Jackson, and it is about TK151.
Yes, I really enjoyed this story because of the humanization of an individual within the empire. Um, you see him as this like rough, like go get him, like I'm a suave speeder, like I can do whatever I want because I am so smooth on this speeder, and he has the skills to back it up. But like
Mhm.
ultimately we know what happens to this individual. Like this does not have a happy ending. In fact, it has a very gruesome ending in the fact
Yep.
that he hits a tree so freaking hard he doesn't feel any limb in his body break as his speeder engulfs him in flames. Like it
Yep.
is very, very dark. Um, but you get this story about how he is uh, joining the Empire because of the rebellion uh, killing his loved ones and them not really taking any responsibility for it because they thought it was a Empire cachet. And so he's like, basically, F the rebels. I'm gonna join the Empire and I'm gonna get my revenge. Um, and that is so human.
Mhm.
For a story that's from a galaxy far, far away that is so human to see in a story like this. So I really dug it.
100%. I really enjoyed the fact that we were kind of getting another look into like the racing side of Star Wars. But I thought that TK151's a fully interesting trooper, and it like this story is one that reminds us that fighting the good fight is not without the casualties on both sides of war.
Nice. The next story, our third story of this part of book club is One Normal Day by Mary Kinney. This is where we get into the uh oh my
The
gosh,
Ewoks.
Ewok stories. Yes, thank you. What did you think of this one?
So I thought this was a fun, and y'all, I'm reading from my notes. Okay, this is just kind of like short little snippets, fun, wistful, and an interesting take on our Wicket friend. I did think this one was a little too long, but otherwise it was still good.
Yeah, I will be completely honest with everybody. I do not remember this one very much. Um, looking at it now, it is definitely a longer one of these stories that are here in the From a Certain Point of View returns. And that's really all I could tell you about this one. There was a few Ewok stories, and I'll be honest, this one I don't remember anything about.
Yeah, I this one kind of just goes into he wants like he goes on a lot of adventures and ends up um like especially with the Empire coming to what is Endor. With the Empire coming to Endor, like they're having to do more and more missions kind of things, and he just wants to like have one day off, basically. And so it is longer than I think I would have liked for this story, but yeah.
Yeah. The
Uh
oh, go ahead.
the next one on our list is Divine Intervention by Paul Crilly, and it is about Logray. And one of the first questions I had about the story was, does Logray have force powers?
Which okay, hold on. They're all I'm telling you, they're all
Logray,
starting to mend together
yeah.
these Ewok stories.
So Logray is like the religious leader.
Yes, yes,
And
yes, yes.
so he like does a lot of the praying and everything, and like I can't remember if he was a fan of getting involved in like beating up the empire or like integrating more villages, but like basically that's kind of what the story is, and he manipulates things to where like he sees um like our rebellion group going around, and he sees the golden one and is like, okay, so the whole thing where they get trapped in the net, he ran back to the village and was like, okay, we need to set up nets in this area so that we can like lure trap,
That's right.
basically.
Yeah.
And so he pretends to have found C3PO spontaneously in that regard, but he actually planned it the whole way through as a way of manipulating the village.
And correct me if I'm wrong, in this story, I believe, like, he is telling the the village people one thing, uh, and then C3PO says something completely different, and he's like, "No, no, 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 no. No, no, that's not what you're supposed to say." Like, he's really trying to go against them. I do remember this one.
Yeah.
This one was pretty funny. Um, and I it I don't know if he would necessarily have force powers or if it's one of those things like, "Hey, I'm your elder, so you have to listen to me," type of thing. Like, kind of like this mutual respect type thing, you
I
know?
can't remember why I wrote that down, but there was some it wasn't that, but it was something in particular where I think he was, like, sensing, like, a presence kind of a feeling. It just felt like that. But ultimately, the notes that I have written down about the story is it's an enjoyable story about the subplots of the Ewok culture.
Yeah, yeah. Uh, I believe our last story
Yes.
is The Buy-In by Susan Walker. Now, this story is about the oh, shoot, which
It
pilot is
it
this?
it is Nora Wexley, who is one of the main characters of the Aftermath trilogy.
Ah, okay, okay, okay.
And at this point, she is Wedge's future wife.
Oh.
So okay, I had a lot of notes about this one because again, I'm a big X-Wing Rogue Squadron book reader person.
Okay.
So this is actually the story where I realized that Hobby, which is the second pilot that is found with Wedge in Rebels, died in Empire Strikes Back. I did not remember that for the life of me. Um, because the main trio or the main quattro in the Rogue Squadron books is Wedge, Hobby, Jansen, and Tycho Kelchu, which Tycho has not made an appearance in canon yet. But I digress. So the first thing I thought was a blue-haired pilot, Chas Chaddock, which is one of the main characters of the Alphabet Squadron.
I was gonna
That
say,
turned
I
out to
think
be
he's
false.
oh, it's not? Okay.
Yes, that was somebody else. And then I said, "Gosh, I love Wedge and Nora together." Um, they just played off
I
each other
loved
so well.
everybody together here.
Yes.
I thought this was a very fun story. This whole idea of again, it's before the, inevitable attack on the DS2. And so, like, there's this idea of like, okay, like I might not live tomorrow. What do we do? Type thing. And they're like, oh, well, let's just all play a game of sabacc or whatever they're playing.
Yeah.
And they're buying in with these random little doodads and whatnot and starting to bet all sorts of stuff. And one of her things is a bag of chocolates, right?
Chocolate
Is
cherries.
yeah, chocolate cherries. And like her big thing is I only have a few of these left. Like this is a like uh 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 to us a chocolate cherry is just like something you could buy at the store, but the way she is acting like this bag of cherries is like, hey, this is a very unique type of treat. You can't really go
Yeah.
out and just buy these anymore. Um and I love how everybody's kind of greedy with it, and like how uh they're just having a good old drunk time. And it's like, hey, we may not live tomorrow, but we're gonna have fun tonight because we're all
Yeah.
friends, we're all pilots, and God forbid we're all dead tomorrow type of thing.
Yes.
Um
I love Jansen so much in this story. Jansen has always been, like, the clown of the group, and I loved getting his full name, Westford Jansen. Like, I just thought that was hysterical. Um, but then you get Jansen and Lando flirting, and I lost my marbles at this. I was dying, and but also at the same time, like, they play off each other so well, and I feel like Lando could use more of a clown in his life to try and, like, get him to be less macho man kind of feeling.
and like a part of me feels like that is Solo. Like that is Han. Like Han is very much a hard ass. He is very much the scoundrel. But he's also like, you put him, Chewie, and Lando together, like, oh my god, like it Chewie Chewie, Han, and Lando are a completely different trio than Luke, Han, and Chewie, you know?
Yeah.
Like we know that for sure. And there's even a different type of feeling. We've read it in uh the Shadows of the Sith when Luke and Lando team up, you know? So
Yes.
I do think Han is that kind of clown when they have time to just kind of sit back.
Yeah. And I think once you get to read Last Shot, I think that will open your perspective on their relationship a lot too. So, um, ultimately for this story, I thought Suzanne Walker did a really incredible job. Getting to know Nora is awesome because I could never finish the Aftermath trilogy. I just couldn't. And I love her as a character. Suzanne gave a lot of insight, Easter eggs, and heart all in one story as Nora starts to actually bond with her squadron. Because at this point, she had only been a cargo pilot, she hadn't been a fighter pilot. So she's brought in as a last ditch effort to bring all the pilots in to defeat the Death Star 2 in this case.
Very nice. Yeah, I really enjoyed this. Like I said, I loved the way they were kind of just like a drunken mess, uh, playing around, and it even got to a point uh where like even other people started to come in, and then they're like, ah, I'm not gonna get into that game. That game looks ridiculous and whatnot. So a lot of fun. And surprisingly, we are how many books in now? Uh
We're
we
halfway through, right?
we're halfway through. We're 20 books in, and I am on a net positive on a majority of these books compared to me reading from a certain point of view A New Hope. So I am very, very glad that I'm enjoying a lot more of these stories for sure.
For sure. Me too. Um, because yeah, a lot of these and now some of the Ewok ones were not my favorite in this case, but I like in love with most of the other stories. So, all right,
All right.
y'all.
Yes, of course. You can always find me at Fanboy Clay on Twitter, Instagram, Threads, any social media you would like. Uh, go check me out there. Go check me out over on Ranger Alliance. There was no new episode this week because I guess I haven't even let people know this. I got the vid. I got the COVID. It
Oh, did you
was
actually get a positive test back?
technically no. But I talked to my doctor, and my doctor was like, "Yeah, that's a safe assumption. I think you have COVID too." And I was like, "Cool." I had a teledoc conversation with her yesterday, so uh, it was not fun. It was not fun. We still don't know who we got it from, which is even worse. But we are very much wearing masks everywhere we go, and we are restricting where we are going as well. So the more and more cases are popping up, variants have popped up, and so we're also going to get another booster here in the next month or so. So people stay safe, stay clean, and stay vaccinated is all I gotta say.
Mm.
But go check out Ranger Alliance, and also go check out Batman News Weekly on YouTube specifically because I am making some YouTube content there, and it is become very very fun to do so. So go check those out.
Yes. And y'all, you can find me on any social media platform. It is at Slice with Katie. And this show you can find on Twitter. Crap! We didn't get to David's email.
Oh, David, I am so sorry. I will we will send you an email sometime today. We will talk about it next week. I will flag it and I will put a post-it note on it and we will talk about it. I am so sorry, David. But I know that you're still listening, David. So thank you so much. You are an amazing pal. Uh we will definitely get to read that email when it comes to next episode.
Yeah, because
And
I didn't even read it. So I'm sorry, David. Um
it was right before we started recording, so it's nothing too big on you, David, or on you, Katie. So, uh, we will get to that next week. But Katie, where can go ahead and
Slice
finish
of
your outro?
Katie. Yeah, find me, Slice of Katie. This show you can find on Twitter. It's at Star Wars Alliance without the A and the wars. Very important. Don't forget it. Remember, you can send us a DM if you have questions about the show, comments about the show, theories. We love hearing about theories. And yes, David, I know I said your theory was far out there. I'm sorry, but like about last week's episode. Anyways, um so you can also send us an email at the same username at gmail.com. Also, remember to reach out to our phone number, leave us a text or a message for the show. Remember, those are screened ahead of time, but that number is 830-538-4828. So, with that, I want to wish everyone a great day or night, whatever time of day you are listening or watching, and we will see y'all next time. May the course be with you.